So, You Can Save the World. It's quite a dynamic title, almost life-affirming, I would say. And the reason for that is because I was only allowed to have 5 words. If I could have had more, it would have been called You Can Save the World, I'll Be in the Bar. But actually, I think many of us recognise that there are lots of problems in the world. We find ourselves kind of lost as to what to do about them. And we wonder what our role is in what's going wrong in the world. If we think that 1% of the population, the world's population, now owns more wealth than the other 99% combined, and that 62 people in the world have more wealth between the 62 of them than the poorest half of the world population. That's 3.6 billion people. So if they put all their money together, they would have less money than these 62 people. And that's clearly somewhat imbalanced. But I think nothing highlights the plight of our world population more than this, really. The fact that we have African children who are earning around 10 cents per day mining for minerals, for batteries, for smartphones, so that we can look at pictures of cats and argue with strangers on social media. And that's the very sorry state of the world. So what can we do about it? Well, the idea is that you can save the world, and we all can, and it's actually a lot easier than we might think. But of course, if you've ever been on an aircraft, you'll have noticed when they do the safety announcement that it's important to put your own oxygen mask on before you start helping other people. So we need to look at ourselves, and that's what I've been trying to do. And I've been doing some research into what motivates us to do, if we're going to understand how we can fix the world, we need to understand what's wrong. So we need to understand why people do the things they do. And so the obvious starting point was Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I don't know whether people are very familiar with this, but it's a theory of human motivation. And the idea is that it explains everything that we do. But the reality of it is that it simply doesn't. I mean, what Maslow said was that we have this hierarchical set of needs, which start with our most basic needs, like our physiological needs, the need to eat, to drink, to go to the bathroom, and so on. And then once we've satisfied those, then we look for safety and security. And then once we satisfy those needs, we start to look for friends, and then we look for the esteem of other people. And I had a problem with this because there's lots of things that aren't included there. I mean, just drinking alcohol, for example, or watching the television, or as Fabio was talking about, playing video games. Which of our human needs is satisfied by these things? So this got me thinking, well, maybe Maslow's missed something here. And the first thing I noticed that he'd missed, he kind of said that once we've satisfied each level of needs, we pass on to a next level. And what I think he missed was the fact that if we think about this first level of needs as our survival needs, the need to eat and to drink and so on, this actually, if you think about it in today's terms, yes, it's perhaps correct. But if you think about early humans, as Andrea was talking about earlier, we can't think about them as having the same needs as us. They had very different needs. And so for them, the threat of death was very real. And so finding safety would have helped them to eat. So it's not like they ate and then they said, right, okay, I'm full now, I'm going to go and have something, I'm going to go and find a house. No, by finding somewhere safe, they were able to eat. So we're talking about natural selection. The people who survived are the ones who found safety. And who were the ones who found safety? Well, they were the ones who managed to bond with others. By bonding together and hunting together, they were able to improve their chances of survival. Who were the ones who were able to bond? Well, the ones who had the esteem of other people and had esteem for other people. So there's an evolutionary element to the hierarchy of needs. So, but the fact it missed all these things out, why do we do these things? Why do people kill other people? I mean, what's the human need to do that? So I did some more research and explored the world of psychology, and Freud and Jung kind of came up with the idea that there are 4 parts to our psyche, and I think we can all kind of identify with these 4 parts of our psyche, which are, we have the person who we really are, which perhaps corresponds to the human needs aspect. We have the person who we present to the world, our kind of social mask. Then we have a part of us which is our, what Freud called the superego, the one that kind of keeps us under control and says, no, you mustn't do that, you need to behave yourself. And then there's a part of us that kind of wants to do terrible things and perhaps excessive things. And we try and keep these things in check. So I came up with the idea, I thought, well, if Maslow is correct, and if we have this hierarchical evolutionary set of needs that relate to our ego, then perhaps we have other elements which relate to these other parts of the psyche, which are interdependent. And to cut a long story short, basically we do. And I researched this over a period of time and came up with what is our hierarchy of ideals, needs, desires, and our neuroses. And this is the framework for all human behaviour. And in actual fact, we're all born psychopaths. We don't become psychopaths. We are born psychopaths. And we either stop being psychopaths or we remain psychopaths. So if you think about that, if we think about childbirth, when we're born, we come out of the environment of the womb, where everything is warm and comfortable, we're fed, we're given love and attention, it's quiet, it's peaceful, it's paradise. And then all of a sudden, childbirth, this loving mother who, with all of her brutal force, pushes us out into the world, and then they cut the cord that ties us to her. And there's lights and there's noise, and it's horrendous. And then we're left to fend for ourselves, and occasionally she'll pick us up and give us some of her milk, and occasionally she'll put us down again and look at her telephone. And so it's natural that we're born with the desire to get back to where we came from. We want to get back in there. But of course we can't do that, so we learn through nurturing to interact with the world, and we develop these other parts of our psyche. So the nurturing and love and attention of our parents teaches us self-control, self-trust, and so on. And these things are hierarchical. So if you look at any of these elements, you can see that the higher element enables the lower element in the same way that it does with Maslow's needs. So, for example, if we look at why people might take drugs, people might become addicted. Well, because the pressures of the world seem too much, and they want to give in to self-abandon, and they don't have the mechanisms to be able to keep that under control. So they give in to it. But in order to do that, well, you must have doubt about your abilities to affront life's problems. And in order to have doubt about your ability to affront life's problems, you must reject your capabilities. And in order to do that, you must negate yourself, your identity in some way. And so these things take us all the way up to the top level, which is a kind of self-transcendence, transcendence, immanence, and emancipation. It's about the liberation from the human condition. It's a shame we can't talk about this more, because it's something that it's worth discussing at great length, I think. But in essence, what life is about is creating a balance of all of these elements. And unless we have that balance, we kind of go off in one direction. So that kind of explains why people might murder other people. Is if we don't find the balance and we don't have our ego needs satisfied, we find them elsewhere. So this enabled me to develop what is a map of the human psyche. And it kind of explains all of the human motivation. It explains all of the functions of our psyche and their relationship to each other. But what it what it pretty much determines is that emotions and all of our behaviour comes from us. So everything that we do is a reflection of who we are. So even if we think about if we think about our behaviour towards other people, that's simply our externalising what's inside us. And so if we look at the mechanism of how that works, on this right-hand side, you can see when, and if we think about this in early human terms, because our dynamics are very different, but the mechanisms that we have are still the same. So when we're faced with any kind of threat or fear, we have a choice, or we have a subconscious choice as to whether we can control that fear or not. And if we feel we can't, what do we try and do? Well, we have to, we immediately get feelings of being weak and unable to deal with the thing. So that kind of batters our ego somewhat. And then we have the fear and stress mechanism, which causes us to either freeze, flee, or fight. And if we escape from that, well, we have a mechanism, the parasympathetic nervous system. We have the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. So when we get anxious, the sympathetic nervous system takes over and prepares us for these battles. And then when we get over it, when we escape, the parasympathetic nervous system kicks in, and it causes us, it triggers what they call our instinct of feed and breed, or rest and repair. So it causes us to want to eat. Now, I can identify with this. I'm a writer, and if I'm stuck for an answer, I've come across and I haven't quite got the answer, my immediate reaction is to escape it. And what do I do to escape it? I go to the biscuit cabinet, or I have the urge to watch a box set of television programs just to escape. So it's within us. We're naturally programmed to escape anything that's difficult. And we're also programmed to kind of wait until we feel right about things. And the answer is we're never going to feel right about things. And stress and anxiety are part of life. And it's how we deal with them that determine how we behave with other people. And we have defense mechanisms in order to do that. We have a number of defense mechanisms, but the principal ones that determine how we behave with other people are projection and displacement. So we either project onto other people, the people who are attacking us, we project back onto them, or we put it onto somebody else. So somebody might have trouble with the boss at home and then take out their anger on their spouse when they get home. So the problem with that is, if we think about, even if you think about somebody who cuts you up in traffic, we might react angrily towards that person. But in actual fact, all we're doing is externalizing the emotion that we're feeling in relation to that incident. So the person might cut you up, and actually what that's doing is damaging maybe your self-esteem. You think, well, this person is not giving me respect. He's pulling out in front of me and not giving me any respect. So what you do is then you project that back onto them by shouting or sounding the horn. So by understanding these mechanisms, we can see that it's actually us that create the world we see. We tend to create our own reality, in a way, by being able to externalize these four parts of our psyche. And we look for people that we can identify with that represent these four parts of our psyche. So we have our kind of spiritual guides and our mentors that we look to give us to control us and to build the trust and acceptance and everything else. Then we have our friends who we can identify with as a kind of a mirror of ourselves. We have our heroes, who provide us with the escape and fulfill our fantasies and give us role models of who we would like to be. And then we have enemies who we can discharge all of our negativity onto. And we look for these figures. So in essence, we as individuals create the world around us. We create these people, who they are. And then when we gather together in communities, we tend to do the same. Now what's interesting is, if you look at the way that societies, ever since the earliest societies formed, they've always been divided into 4 groups of people. So if we look at the Hindu caste system, which is one of the most ancient, but there are lots of very similar civilizations organized in just the same way. You have the priesthood, the nobility, the merchants, and the laborers. And that then evolved under the feudal system. We had priests, nobilities, commoners, and then serfs. Then we started to kind of push people further and further down. And if we look at today, well, we have the same thing. We still have the elite. We have a reality that is actually an illusion, and we've created this illusion. So we've created the illusion that we have a government that rules us and a democratic system. But if we look at the actual makeup of society, it's the corporations that govern us, and the people who own those corporations. These 62 people, or the 1% who have more than the rest of the 99%, they are the people who govern, and they're above government. And so religion and the media all support this kind of this network and this illusion that we use to create our society. So if you look at the role of the media in this, I mean, this is the British press. They understand these mechanisms, and they understand how we respond to fear. So they fill us with fear, and they give us an enemy to point our aggression to. And they give us bread and circus. That's as the Roman says. Exactly. They give us the bread. So they give us X Factor and MasterChef and television to lose ourselves in. They give us an enemy. But it's actually, we think, here's me talking about they do this. It's not they who do it. It's we who allow them to do it. So basically, if we look at how we create society, we can actually change that by ethically adapting reality. So we can create the reality that we want. So by withdrawing our support for the mechanisms, I mean, if you think about, for example, if we didn't agree with the Catholic Church, if we go to St. Peter's Square on a Sunday morning, particularly at Easter, it'll be full of people listening to the Pope. Now, if you took away the people, that's an old man shouting from his window, So it's us that create the reality. And so what I'm proposing is that we examine how we sustain the reality that we disagree with, and then just withdraw our support for it and create our own reality, one that we believe in, one that we believe can work. We can switch off our televisions, stop reading our newspapers. If we want to be interested in history, then get interested in history, not what we get told by the media. And get back to, as Fernando was talking about Tizzi this morning, get back to nature, spending time with friends, enjoying each other's company, and doing the things that actually we can make a difference to, and ignore the stuff that we can't make a difference to. Thanks very much.